to see similar things.
Going back to coding, do you miss writing code? Is this something you're kind of sad about, that this is no longer a thing you will do as a software engineer?
It's funny for me, like when I learned engineering, for me it was very practical. I learned engineering so I could build stuff, and for me, I was self-taught. Like I studied economics in school. I didn't study CS. But I taught myself engineering kind of early on. I was programming in like middle school. And from the very beginning, it was very practical. So I actually I've learned to code so that I can cheat on a math test. It was like the first thing. We had these like graphing calculators, and I just programmed the answer into
TI-83.
TI-83 plus. Yeah, exactly. Plus, yeah. So I programmed the answers in, and then the next like math test, whatever, like the next year, it was just like too hard. Like I couldn't program all the answers in because I didn't know what the questions were, and so I had to write like a little solver so that it was a program that would just like solve these like these algebra questions or whatever. And then I figured out you can get a little cable, you can give the program to the rest of the class, and then the whole class gets A's. Then we all got caught, and the teacher told us to knock it off. But from the very beginning, it's always just been very practical for me, where programming is a way to build a thing. It's not the end in itself. At some point, I personally fell into the rabbit hole of kind of like the beauty of programming. So like I wrote a book about TypeScript. I started actually at the time it was the world's biggest TypeScript meetup, just because I fell in love with the language itself. And I kind of got deep into like functional programming and all this stuff. I think a lot of coders, they get distracted by this. For me, it was always sort of, there is a beauty to programming, and especially to functional programming. There's a beauty to type systems. There's a certain kind of like this like buzz that you get like when you solve like a really complicated math problem. It's kind of similar when you kind of balance the types, or the program is just like really beautiful. But it's really not the end of it. I think for me, coding is very much a tool, and it's a way to do things. That said, not everyone feels this way. So for example, like there's one engineer on the team, Lena, who was still writing C++ on the weekends by hand because for her, she just really enjoys writing C++ by hand. So everyone is different. And I think even as this field changes, even as everything changes, there's always space to do this. There's always space to enjoy the art and to kind of do things by hand if you want.
Do you worry about your skills atrophying as an engineer? Is that something you worry about, or is it just like this is just how it's going to go?
I think it's just the way that it happens. I don't worry about it too much personally. I think for me, like programming is on a continuum, and like way back in the day. Like software actually is like relatively new. Right? Like if you look at the way programs are written today, like using software that's running on a virtual machine or something, this has been the way that we've been writing programs since probably the 1960s. So, it's been, like 60 years or something like that. Before that, it was punch cards. Before that, it was switches. Before that, it was hardware. And before that, it was just like literally pen and paper. It was like a room full of people that were doing math on paper. And so, programming has always changed in this way. In some ways, you still want to understand the layer under the layer, because it helps you be a better engineer. And I think this will be the case maybe for the next year or so. But I think pretty soon it just won't really matter. It's just going to be kind of like the assembly code running under the programmer or something like that. At an emotional level, I feel like I've always had to learn new things. And as a programmer, it's actually it doesn't feel that new because there's always new frameworks. There's always new languages. It's just something that we're quite comfortable with in the field. But at the same time, this isn't true for everyone. And I think for some people, they're going to feel a greater sense of, I don't know, maybe like loss or nostalgia or atrophy or something like this.
I don't know if you saw this, but Elon was saying that why isn't the AI just writing binary, straight to binary? Because what's the point of all this, programming abstraction in the end?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it totally can do that if you wanted to.
Oh, man. So what I'm hearing here is there's always this question, should I learn to code? Should people in school learn to code? What I heard from you is your take is in like a year or two, you don't really need to.
My take is, I think for people that are using that are using quad code, that are using agents to code today, you still have to understand the layer under. But yeah, in a year or two, it's not going to matter. I was thinking about what is the right like historical analog for this? Is like somehow we have to situate this thing in history and kind of figure out when have we gone through similar transitions? What's the right kind of mental model for this? I think the thing that's come closest for me is the printing press. So if you look at Europe in like in the mid 1400s, literacy was actually very low. There was sub 1% of the population. It was scribes that they were the ones that did all the writing. They were the ones that did all the reading. They were employed by like lords and kings that often were not literate themselves. So, it was their job of this very tiny percent of the population to do this. And at some point, Gutenberg and the printing press came along. And there was this crazy stat that in the 50 years after the printing press was built, there was more printed material created than in the 1,000 years before. So the volume of printed material just went way up. The cost went way down. It went down something like 100x over the next 50 years. And if you look at literacy, it actually took a while because learning to read and write is, it's quite hard. It takes an education system. It takes free time. It takes like not having to work on a farm all day so that you actually have time for education and things like that. Over the next 200 years, it went up to like 70% global. So I think this is the kind of thing that we might see is a similar kind of transition. There was actually this interesting historical document where there was an interview with some like scribe in the 1400s about like, how do you feel about the printing press? And they were actually very excited because they were like, actually, the thing that I don't like doing is copying between books. The thing that I do like doing is drawing the art in books and then doing the bookbind. And I'm really glad that now my time is free. It's interesting, like as an engineer, I sort of felt like a parallel with this. Like this is sort of how I feel, where I don't have to do the tedious work anymore of coding, because this has always been sort of the detail of it. It's always been the tedious part of it and kind of like messing with like Git and kind of using all these different tools. That was not the fun part. The fun part is figuring out what to build and kind of coming up with this. It's talking to users. It's thinking about these big systems. It's thinking about the future. It's collaborating with, other people on the team. And that's what I get to do more of now.
What's amazing is that the tool you're building allows anybody to do this. People that have no technical experience can do exactly what you're describing. Like I've been doing a bunch of random little projects, and it's just like anytime you get stuck, just like help me figure this out, and you get unblocked. Like I was an engineer earlier in my career for 10 years, and I just remember spending so much time on like libraries and dependencies and little things, and just like, oh my God, what do I do? And then looking on Stack Overflow, and now it's just like, help me figure this out. And here's step 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we got this.
Yeah, exactly. I was talking to an engineer earlier today. They're writing some service in Go, and it's been like a month already, and they built up the service. Like it's working quite well. And then I was like, okay, so like, how do you feel writing it? And he was like, I still don't really know Go, but and I think we're going to start to see more and more of this. It's like, if you know that it works correctly and efficiently, then you don't actually have to know all the details.
Clearly, the life of a software engineer has changed dramatically. It's like a whole new job now as of the past year or two. What do you think is the next role that will be most impacted by AI either within tech, like, product managers, designers, or even outside tech? Just like, where do you think AI is going next?
I think it's going to be a lot of the roles that are adjacent to engineering. So yeah, it could be like product managers, it could be design, could be data science. It is going to expand to pretty much any kind of work that you can do on a computer, because the model is just going to get better and better at this. And like this is the Cowork product is kind of the first way to get at this. It's just the first one. And it's the thing that I think brings agentic AI to people that haven't really used it before. And people are starting to get a sense of it for the first time. And I think back to engineering a year ago, no one really knew what an agent was. No one really used it. But nowadays, it's just the way that, we do our work. And then when I look at non-technical work today, or like maybe semi-technical, like product work and, like data science and things like that. When you look at the kinds of AI that people are using, it's always these like conversational AI. It's like a chatbot or whatever. But no one really has used an agent before. And this word agent just gets thrown around all the time, and it's just like so misused. It's like lost all meaning. The agent actually has like a very specific technical meaning, which is it's an AI, it's a LLM that's able to use tools. So it doesn't just talk, it can actually act, and it can interact with your system. And this means like it can use your Google Docs, and it can send email, it can run commands on your computer and do all this kind of stuff. So I think like any kind of job where you use computer tools in this way, I think this is going to be next. This is something we have to kind of figure out as a society. This is something we have to figure out as an industry. And I think for me also, this is one of the reasons it feels very important and urgent to do this work at Anthropic, because I think we take this very, very seriously. And so now, we have economists, we have policy folks, we have social impact folks. This is something we just want to talk about a lot. So as a society, we can kind of figure out what to do, because it shouldn't be up to us.
So the big question, which you're kind of alluding to, is jobs and job loss and things like that. This concept of Jevons paradox of just as we can do more, we hire more, and it's not actually as scary as it looks. What have you experienced so far, I guess, with AI becoming a big part of the engineering job? Just are you hiring more than if you didn't have AI? Just thoughts on jobs?
Yeah, I mean, for our team, we're hiring. So Quad Code team is hiring. If you're interested, just check out the jobs page on Anthropic. Personally, it's, all this stuff has just made me enjoy my work more. I have never enjoyed coding as much as I do today, because I don't have to deal with all the minutiae. So for me personally, it's been quite exciting. This is something that we hear from a lot of customers, where they love the tool, they love Quad Code, because it just makes coding delightful again. And that's just so fun for them. But it's hard to know where this thing is going to go. And I have to reach for these historical analogs. And I think the printing press is just such a good one, because what happened is this technology that was locked away to a small set of people, like knowing how to read and write, became accessible to everyone. It was just inherently democratizing. everyone started to be able to do this. And if that wasn't the case, then something like the Renaissance just could never have happened. Because a lot of the Renaissance, it was about like knowledge spreading. It was about like written records that people used to communicate. Because there were no phones or anything like this. There's no internet at the time. So it's about like, what does this enable next? And I think that's the very optimistic version of it for me. And that's the part that I'm really excited about. It's just unimaginable. Like we couldn't be talking today if the printing press hadn't been invented. Like our microphones wouldn't exist. None of the things around us would exist. It just wouldn't be possible to coordinate such a large group of people if that wasn't the case. And so I imagine a world, a few years in the future where everyone is able to program. And what does that unlock? Anyone can just build software anytime. And I have no idea. It's just the same way that, in the 1400s, no one could have predicted this. I think it's the same way. I do think in the meantime, it's going to be very disruptive and it's going to be painful for a lot of people. And again, as a society, this is a conversation that we have to have. And this is the thing that we